Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
I named the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints.
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is my man who loves the new year, and loves new things, and loves time hopping, and probably other stuff too. Frank, how are you today?
Hey, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. 2020 doesn't feel like a real year.
I know, 2020. We're in the 20s now. We're in the roaring 20s.
Oh, I'm in my 20s again.
Oh man. Missed
It's
those.
nice. Yeah.
It's great.
It's nice.
Ugh.
It's nice. Yeah.
Well, how are you doing, my friend?
I am doing quite well. What a new year it's been already. Stuff's happened probably. Christmas and whatever else. So, yeah, life's good. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be back with you. We took a little time off, but it's good to be back.
It is nice to be back. Nice Christmas vacation we had.
Yeah,
Did you get trapped in the attic at all, or were you fine?
No,
yeah.
no. None of that, luckily.
Okay,
Luckily,
good.
Yeah.
That was my one Christmas vacation reference that I can reference, because the only part of the movie I ever remember.
Did have a whole thing where I became Santa and went to the North Pole, and I woke up and no one remembered any of it, but my son kept telling me that we went to the. Anyway, it was weird, but we got.
Hold on, that. I have several questions. 1, Santa's real? Question mark.
Mm-hmm.
2, you have a son? Question mark.
Mm-hmm.
3, you wear pajamas? Question mark.
Yeah, Rose such a ladder.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Santa Claus. I was actually before Christmas. We had our work Christmas party, and we played this big game. You got to answer questions and make a fool of yourself. Blah 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 blah. And somebody said, "What's your favorite Christmas movie?" And they said, "The Santa Claus."
Nice.
And I wanted to give them a hug.
Love that movie. I think
it's
it's underappreciated, but I love it.
Yep, me too. My wife and I watched it when we decorated the tree. Actually, that was the movie we had on.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Great choice.
Yeah. Oh, excellent choice. Yeah. Anyway, how's your New Year been? It's been all right.
It's been great. I'm celebrating with not with champagne, but with the champagne of beers, Miller High Life.
Ooh,
feeling fancy.
That's champagne.
The champagne of beers. That's what they call it.
No, it is. You're right. You're right. I am celebrating. I'm celebrating the 2020s with a very old beer, a Yuengling.
Ooh, the oldest brewery in America.
Yes, indeed. Going backwards through time.
Love it.
Yeah, crazy how the world is the same. Probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yuengling's good old traditional lager.
Yes, that's all good. It's all good.
Love it.
Yuengling's like a good party beer because everyone likes it. You can just put it in the fridge, and people are like, "Ooh, fancy Yuengling."
It's a crowd pleaser.
And it's a crowd pleaser, but it feels fancy for some reason.
It does.
Maybe because it's fairly new to New England.
I think that's it. I remember when it came to New England, when it started getting distributed here 5-6 years ago.
All right, old man, shut up.
Well, just because
I remember when it came to New England.
My point is,
I'm just
it's everywhere in New York, so it wasn't special to me. And then I came here, I moved here, and about a year or two into me living here, it came here, and everyone was like, "Dude, we get Yuengling now," and I was like, "Yeah, that's like Budweiser or Coors when I come in the sense that it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere." So it's good, it's better than Budweiser or Coors, but it's just
is it better than Miller High Life?
Okay, cool, right, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, everyone was excited, and I was like, I'm not against it. I'm just not as excited as you. But I do enjoy Yuengling. I really do. So good choice.
Thank you.
Lots of good choices all around.
Thank you.
So let's we haven't talked comics in a while.
Oh man, haven't we not? Mostly because we're working married adults and don't have time to read comics the way that we used to when we were in college or single. Yeah. Used to come home, sit on the couch, be like, I'm going to read some comic books. Now I'm going to come home and do chores and come home and chat with my loved ones. And
come
home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I want to spend quality time with my wife. Weird how that works, huh?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and then you end up just like scrolling through your phone as they scroll through their phone.
But next
You're
to each other.
You technically could still be reading the comic, but you just don't.
I guess, yeah. So, it's a different kind of focus. It's
it is a completely different kind of focus. I think it's funny because I don't think if you don't do it, you don't get it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah. But anyway, speaking of not getting things in a timely manner,
nice.
Doomsday, hilariously titled Doomsday Clock, a thing that tells time in an orderly manner. Finally finished over at DC Comics. This is the superhero DC Comics Watchmen crossover event by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank and Brad Anderson. If you want to get into the colorists and stuff. That wasn't even in front of me. I'm pretty sure that's correct information.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm looking at it.
Am I? Yes. I wish I knew who the inker was. I like giving credit to everybody. Did Gary Frank ink his own stuff? Don't think so.
It actually doesn't say. It just says pencilers, Gary Frank, letterer Rob Lee, colorist Brad Anderson, and then it goes.
I wonder if Gary Frank does ink his own stuff.
Maybe he does ink his own stuff. I don't know. There's no inker listed here. So
inks his own. Cool. Well, anyway, Doomsday Clock finally finished this 12-part series about the Watchmen characters kind of in some way invading the DC universe, and I quite honestly stopped reading around issue 5 because it was getting so delayed that I was like, I had to keep going back to issue 1 to remember what was happening.
Yeah.
So I just stopped reading it. I was getting them. I just stopped reading it.
It was 12 issues that took 2 years to come out.
Right. Yeah. It took double the amount of time that it should have.
Right.
However, I'd rather get consistent, good storytelling and art and wait 2 years, because now that it's over, it doesn't really matter that I waited 2 years.
Exactly.
And so I got consistency from start to finish because they took their time. Totally okay with that.
I'd rather have a consistent product on an inconsistent time scale.
Yes, me too. Absolutely. So, which leads to the question, what did you think of Doomsday Clock?
I had the same feeling where I just started to lose investment in it at a certain point because I needed to go back to the start and sort of refresh my memory so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually really dig the ending, and I really love how they are sort of this was not really a crisis, but it is sort of a universe reshaping event in that sense. And I really, really dig the direction that they're taking it, and it's basically what you would expect from someone like Jeff Johns, to the direction you'd expect him to take the universe. Let's rebuild this whole. The moral of the story for me is the DC universe is built around Superman. And
that's it. That's the moral of Doomsday Clock. Do you think that was the original intention of Doomsday Clock? I'm not really.
Kind of, because going back to Rebirth #1, there was a fair bit of, and I need to go back and read that again now in light of Doomsday Clock, but that definitely kicked this off, right? And there was already connections between Superman and Dr. Manhattan that were being made there, that I feel like paid off here. I feel like Jeff Johns usually has a blueprint in his mind of where he wants to take these things.
That's true. He very rarely deviates from his original intention because he sets everything up so early that he has to know where it ends. And he might change a few pieces here and there, but it's a very consistent book. Some characters get dropped a little bit. That was the thing I found a little inconsistent, where I wasn't really sure who I was supposed to be following the whole time, if that makes sense. So if I was to compare it to Watchmen, Alan Moore is fairly consistent in who are your main players and who are your supplemental players that play an important part in the plot.
Right.
And this one, I'm not really sure. For a book that basically book's basic message was Superman is really important, he's actually really not super involved in the majority of the story. He only comes in like a force of nature, and then things start to kind of revolve around. But it is definitely more of a vehicle for Watchmen characters than it is for characters in the DC universe, which I liked because there are a lot of stories with characters in the DC universe There's not a whole lot with the Watchmen characters.
Right.
I enjoy that. I think it's also quite fascinating that many of the same characters were the ones that popped up in the Watchmen television show.
Which I haven't finished yet, but I'm very excited to do so.
Oh, okay. I have finished it. They actually finished on the same week, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is funny that the timing worked out that way.
Yeah, it could have been company synergy. I mean, they could have very easily have wanted to align, like they knew it was going to end up aligning this way, and so maybe the delays were on purpose, like in that, like they started to be like, okay, we got to like help people finish and need more time to wrap up and it be consistent and blah, blah, blah. But maybe it then became like, oh, like, well, it's going to wrap up this way. It's going to wrap on the same week. Anyway, let's start at the very beginning because it's a very good place to start.
When you read, you begin with Doomsday number 1.
The 9-panel grid. Do you like that? Like the world found out that Adrian Veidt messed with everybody, and that his plan actually failed. Yeah, I do too. It's the idea that you can't hide the truth forever. I think, and so that he may be one of the smartest men in the world, self-proclaimed, according to the story, self-proclaimed smartest man in the world. But he can't foresee everything,
right?
And I think that's how Watchmen ends, right? With the newspaper getting the Rorschach journal, and so like we know it's going to unravel for him,
right?
But
right.
Do you find that for a genocidal maniac, like, do you find that he gets his comeuppance? I guess.
Does he get his comeuppance? Probably not the way he deserves.
What would you say he deserves?
Like a trial at the Hague. You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
yeah.
So, but he got some comeuppance.
He did. I mean, he's going to jail, so on and so forth. So it's all good. I actually have a question. This is completely different. Is this supposed to be the regular DC universe?
Yeah. I think this is the new DC universe. I think this is the rebirth DC universe. The metaverse.
Oh, right. So let's. I want to unpack all of that, but like their costumes, like Batman's costume, is not his regular DC universe, current DC universe costume. So that's why I'm confused. That like they talked about Superman being like, this is the metaverse and this is the like where everything comes from. So like, is the rebirth universe a different, like, is that a different world that we're reading right now, and this is the metaverse?
I hadn't noticed the costume differences, to be honest. You always pick up on that more than I do. So I hadn't noticed that. So that does make me question things. I was taking it sort of at face value of this is the universe that was sort of created at the beginning of Rebirth. That Dr. Manhattan did what the Anti-Monitor did in Crisis on Infinite Earths, where like he created a new universe, and this is he's the creator going forward.
Yeah, that's kind of how I took it too on first reading, but like Batman's got a yellow bat symbol. He's got the yellow oval, and then about maybe 3/4 of the way through the book, maybe issue 9, 10, or 11. Now all of a sudden he's in like regular Batman, like the one you see in the regular costume now, which is what made me think like I wonder if this was the original intention, and it became something else by the end, because I think it was supposed to be like, I wonder if it was like literally supposed to be its own story, not connected at all, or in some way, and then it ended up becoming connected and it became the metaverse instead of the, like, I'm not exactly sure. I want to know the history of this book, because it sets up the next 1,000 years of DC stories, but where does that, like, hold on, I don't have it in front of me. If you wouldn't mind talking for a second.
Yeah.
Say words.
I will say words. One thing I think that you're hinting at here is that the story is a bit difficult to follow, and maybe I feel that way because I read it over the course of 2 years and I need to maybe I need to reread this as a collected edition. In fact, I definitely need to reread this as a collected edition. But maybe the fact that it took 2 years to tell this story is part of the reason why I feel like it's a bit meandering and a bit hard to follow. I do feel like Jeff had a certain pillars of this story planted like in stone to begin with. So I don't think that the fundamentals of where this is in continuity and stuff, I don't get the sense that has changed over the last 2 years. I could be wrong, but I get the sense that the intent that happened, like this feels like it spins out of Rebirth for me. It feels like it tells more of the story of Rebirth, and so I don't think that has changed. But I do think that other elements of it may have changed.
I think that the Legion of Superheroes inclusion is an excellent tell in that it doesn't exactly fit. Actually, even the Justice Society of America doesn't exactly fit because they got introduced recently within the last couple of months in Justice League. Like
there's definitely some retconning going on.
Yeah, so like which one am I supposed to like? Which one is the universe-changing event? Because they both are universe-changing events happening at the same time.
This is kind of the thing that happens. This is what happens though when these things get delayed like this, because sometimes, like this probably was supposed to be published before that, and so this was supposed to maybe reintroduce those characters, and then you'd see them in where we've been seeing them in continuity. Do you know what I mean? Even like Superman's Secret Origin, came out and started being like, this is the new fundamental origin of Superman, and by the time it was finished publishing, parts of it were already outdated because the two sides weren't really like the Jeff and Gary Frank publishing Superman Secret Origin weren't talking to the creative team working or I don't know if they weren't talking, but like the stories didn't line up. So I feel like that's more of a function of it being delayed than it is like a choice of let's change it. That's how I read it, or how I kind of think these things get made.
Yeah, I think you are correct. They still don't exactly add up, but I think you're right in that this is Doomsday Clock is the new status quo story moving forward. Like I love the idea that Earth 1 or Earth 0, whatever you want to call it, is the metaverse. The everything in that universe is what informs the rest of the multiverse.
Yes.
I love that idea.
Love
that
it. Everything else is an
all
echo of
spins. That. Yeah, I think that is a brilliant concept, because that's kind of how it always has been. This is the main universe, blah, 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 but like for them to give it a new term and to like put it concretely in a story, I think that's really, really strong.
Codified it.
And I love that Dr. Manhattan is the reason for the New 52. Like, what happens if I take Hope out of this universe? I'm curious. Boom, New 52. That's what happens.
Love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it doesn't necessarily negate the New 52, but it actually hones in on what was missing from those stories, because they were supposed to be edgier and this and all that stuff, but when you to get edgy, you have to have characters not feel inspired, so they're in a dark place. That's where the edgy comes from, and I thought that was really, really intelligent. It's really intelligent writing. Mm-hmm. Jeff Johns' main skill is retconning. That's like
he's really good. He's really good at it's more than retconning. When he does it well, it's like synthesizing two different things and making them feel like one continuous story. Like, here are these two separate versions of a story, and how can we marry them in a way that they don't feel like they're completely from different worlds? He has his biggest talent. That's his biggest talent.
That's right. And he does it in a way, I think Grant Morrison is really good at that too, but he does it in a way that's a little bit more confusing.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. More of a cosmic level, like, it can definitely get confusing. But Jeff Johns does it in sort of a plain, simple way where, like, he can almost explain it in a sentence, and it's just sort of like, oh, that suddenly works for me.
Yep. So like so now every version of Superman and every version of the DC universe happens all over again. And so Superman does show up in 1938, and then he shows up in 1956, and then he shows up in 1985, and blah, blah, blah. It even says, actually, in here, where it says Earth 1 after the first and greatest crisis, the Earth divides again. The Earth one becomes Earth 1985, a world unexplored even today. So even like that, like John Byrne era Superman, like all of that stuff, that's its own universe now. That had never been before. That's always been like the core universe. So, but also 1985 universe unexplored today. That means we're getting some 1985 DC Universe stories.
Well, I think you're right. I think you're right. So there was also something said towards the end of the issue when he starts flashing into he's flashing backwards, right? I think it's probably right around a couple pages away from where you are, probably. And then he talks about 2025, and in 2025, a crisis unlike the metaverse has seen, one they will call Time Masters erupts. Is Jeff telling us that in 5 years we're getting a new crossover called Time Masters? Because I kind of feel like
he absolutely is. Well, I can confirm some things on here. I want to go backwards.
Great.
So it says after the Flashpoint in this rebirth, Earth 52 is out there. I look beyond now. He says Earth 52 is out there. I wonder if that means like Earth, like that's still out there, like the new 52, Earth 52. Like it's still out there. It hasn't really gone away yet. And then you said 2020. Superman's timeline is bombarded by the reckless energies of the old gods once again warping the metaverse. So that's it. That's the setup for the story. That's our new crossover. And that's 2020 Superman's timeline is bombarded by reckless energies, the old gods once again warping the metaverse, which means in 2020, from 2020 to 2025, we're getting a new status quo for DC. And then we're getting a new crisis called the Time Masters, which is a thing. Time Masters are a thing. Rip Hunter and all that, jazz. Yeah. In its wake, Superman is revitalized, and his greatest allies return. So, here's the thing. It says here at the bottom, an Earth 5G is born. In January 2026, the timeline is restored, and Earth 5G is born. That's what DC's been calling their new initiative. It's like out there in the world. It's been out there in the world for months already.
Earth 5G?
Earth 5G, not in comics, but like they've been talking to retailers about it, and here's the new plan, and like all this stuff. Bleeding Cool's been kind of like tracking its progress, and bleedingcool.com, I should say, for people who don't know what Bleeding Cool is. They've been tracking this. They've been tracking this progress where DC's gone to retailers and be like, hey, this is what's happening. What do you think about it? And you see some of that happening in like one of these panels on here. Batman's got his yellow oval with an old utility belt. Wonder Woman's wearing pants. You get an African American Wonder Woman in the corner near Batgirl and Nightwing. Donna Troy is back. There's some Aqualad is in here again. Luke Fox is wearing a bat suit. Like, it's over and over again, and it says in June 17th, 2026, that's my parents' anniversary, Superman goes on a quest to find Bruce Wayne's lost daughter so she can save Bruce's son. And so, like, I'm pretty sure, like, this is all out of the writer's room, and this is, like, this wasn't Jeff's original intention, but this is kind of, like, but he's, now that everything's set in stone 2 years later, like, he's telling you exactly what's happening in the DC universe. And then Secret, but I don't know, like, so now we get to 2030, like, Secret Crisis, are they planning that far ahead? Are they planning 10 years ahead?
That's where I start to feel like, yeah, like, is that real too? Like, is that also on a roadmap somewhere at DC headquarters, or is that just like, now we're just fantasizing?
Well, it may be, because Secret Crisis is Marvel versus DC. Secret Wars, Crisis, Secret, right? That's like, their thing is Secret, DC's thing is Crisis, Secret Wars, and it says right in here, it begins with Superman in a brawl across the universe with Thor, and a green behemoth stronger than even Doomsday, who dies protecting Superman from these invaders. That's the Hulk, right? So, like, is that a new DC Marvel crossover?
I don't know. But why would they be telling us that? Like, how could they plan it 10 years from now and be like, all right, well, we're not going to do this for 10 years? Like, that's the part where I'm like, this can't be real. This must just be like a fun thing he threw in, like as like one of many futures that could happen.
I mean, it's very possible, because these things change. You know, obviously people get new ideas. Like I said, the Legion thing doesn't exactly line up because of Bendis's plans with the Legion now that are happening. with their own book and Superman, the Justice Society. Like, all this stuff is different than what is kind of already in here. But maybe this is the beginning of DC. Maybe this is the beginning to track, like, DC and Marvel going, okay, yeah, throw that in there. See if there's any traction on this. Because companies have been doing, last couple of years, there's been a lot of Dark Horse DC crossovers.
Yes, definitely.
And, like, they're, like, starting to talk to one another a little bit more because, let's face it, the comics industry is not doing super well. Like, it's doing okay, but it's not doing super well. And so they need to figure out new plans of survival. And if that means splitting profits and whatever.
No, I'm with you 100%. And they've done it already, right? We already got a DC Amalgam
Twice.
Comics, right?
Yeah,
so,
we got
like,
Amalgam. There's DC, JLA versus the Avengers in the 90s.
Right. So that's not the part that I'm questioning. It's the timing. It's the, how can you say 10 years from now we're doing a crossover? Things change so much. So many different people will be in charge 10 years from now. Corporate priorities will be different. How can you possibly say we're committing to doing this 10 years from now? So I don't think this is so much a commitment. I think you're more on track by saying, like, they're throwing the idea out there and, like, it'd be fun if we could make this happen. We're not setting it in stone. Like, the 5G thing is set in stone, but the Secret Crisis 10 years from now thing is probably more of a, this would be a fun thing that could happen. And if it doesn't come to fruition, we'll look back and say that was just one of many futures that could have happened.
Yeah,
Dr.
I agree. I think we're set in stone until 2026, unless somebody gets a different idea. And then from there, we don't know. Because then we get to 2038, we get to, 2038, 2162, so on and so forth. Like, obviously, Jeff Johns is not planning on
That's
what's happening in 2162.
Agreed. So I think that 2030 is where that starts to fork off into, like, the fantasy stuff. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I do like his little line about, like, and, like, Superman comes into the 31st century, like when the world gets to the 31st century, like, everything kind of, like, weirdly aligns, because that's where Superman, like, comes into what the Legion is. Like, that's cool. It's cool thinking. This is what, like, gets me jazzercised about comics,
Yeah, man. Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, I miss Jeff Johns being, like, more of a shaping voice in the DC universe, back in, like, the Blackest Night era and stuff like that. And this feels like that again. This gives me that kind of excitement and that kind of feeling of fun again. And I love it. I love it. I love him as, like, an architect for the DC universe.
Me too. One thing, I love that the Kents are alive again.
Yeah.
I love that his parents are alive again. And they go through the different versions, but I love that Jeff's version of Pa Kent's death is in here as a panel. Gary Frank did that art, and now he gets to redo it here. But the panel is just like it's just a full shot, and it's the fence post, because famously he like if you remember the issue, the panel is just a wonderful callback to that issue without being too explicit. In its retelling, it's like, that's, I think, like, where it was worth waiting for Doomsday Clock to come into play here. But that's all in the last couple of pages of Doomsday Clock. What about the rest of the story? Like, did I read 12 issues just to get to, like, a preview?
That's kind of how I feel, honestly. I feel like most of the story didn't really keep me going for a lot of it. It was sort of like, get ready, there's something coming. Get ready, there's something coming. Get ready, there's something coming. And then issue 12 was like, here's what you've been waiting for 2 years. I in some ways, I wish they had done it in, like, 6 issues, because I feel like it was very decompressed, and I don't know if they were grander designs at the start or whatnot, but it kind of feels like everything you need to know kind of happens in issue 1 and issue 12.
Yep, kind of. Like, these are all the people, and here you go. So, like, when I finished 12, because I read them, like, I knew 12 was coming out on Wednesday, so I read 1 through 11 between Tuesday and Wednesday morning to, like, read 12.
Yeah.
And so when I read 12, I was like, man, what a great wrap up. And now I'm thinking, like, in retrospect, I'm like, I really loved what they said was coming, like, these new stories, and I'm excited and all that thing. But, like, Doomsday Clock itself, it's well drawn. It's I think it's paced fairly well, and the characters are interesting and whatever else, but, like, not a lot happens. And I was saying that when I was reading it the first couple of issues, like, when they were coming out on time. Like, I'm intrigued, but not a lot is happening. And I think that's fairly true for the whole story. Not a lot happens.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the whole, was it a thrilling series? Was it like a great read? I mean, not really. Like, it's not something I'd say you got to read this story. It's such a great story.
I would say read these last 5 pages.
It sets things up. Yeah, exactly. The ending sets up some really exciting things. I mean, here's what it is. I think issue 12 is where it's at. Issue 12 is my favorite issue of this whole series. I think it's a great issue. 12 tells a great story, but to understand it, you got to read 1 through 11.
Yep.
If it was a TV series and I was like, the season finale is the whole thing, but you got to watch the whole season for it to make sense, I would kind of grade that as like it's a bad show with a great finale.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I don't disagree.
And so translating that to comics, if I'm being honest, even though it's about my favorite writer and all this stuff, it's kind of not a great series, but it has a fantastic ending that's like almost makes up for it. Yeah,
I think so too. I really think the intention of Doomsday Clock was quite different from where it ended up. Because I said like some characters get dropped, and like true. Marionette and Mime are incredibly intriguing characters. Some of Jeff Johns' newest characters, and about issue 6 or so, they're just like, all right, we're moving on from them now. And then characters like Black Adam's like taking over the UN and stuff, and I'm like, but like tell that story. Like it's just like so like in the corner from what's happening elsewhere that I'm not really sure what I am looking at this. But am I supposed to be looking at? Yeah, so like looking at the metaverse or the new. So I don't know exactly what I'm looking at. I do really like that Mime and Marionette are staying in the metaverse though, because I want to see more of their story. I really like them, and clearly Jeff likes them too, and he wants to see more with them as well.
Yep. I really do hope we see more of those characters. 'Cause I agree, they were underserved, and it seemed kind of strange to introduce them the way they did, and then just sort of take the foot off the gas with them. The Black Adam stuff too. I definitely agree with you that things changed over the last 2 years with this story, and priorities shifted as to what they needed to focus on more. I think the through line, if there is one, of this story is really Dr. Manhattan figuring out like what the meaning of life is, right? As sort of as his whole thing, and figuring out what the nexus of the multiverse, the metaverse is, and figuring out in issue 12 that it's Superman, and that the moment where he's like, and for the first time I'm inspired, when he looks at Superman, kind of feels like almost like the editorial team at DC having an epiphany. I felt that way with Rebirth. I feel that way with this, where it's sort of like they're coming back. I think they lost the thread of like why people enjoyed their characters for a little bit there, and I feel like they're coming back around to realizing what sets DC apart and what makes it special.
Yes, I agree with that, and that's basically what this book is. In a weird way, it's a love letter to this is what makes these characters special. Even if a lot of the characters that you love don't really show up and have a lot to do with anything, they're still because Superman is the apex, I guess, of all of these characters. He represents all of them.
That's right.
In their inspiration and hope and so on and so on and so on. So DC's been tweeting out this is our new timeline, like Wonder Woman is like fought with the Justice Society, so on, and that like gets its seeds planted here, but then also in Justice League, and so I don't know.
There's still some fuzziness. They still struggle to make it all the pieces fit together really perfectly. Mm-hmm. But this feels very much like the start of a new era, the start of some really exciting years ahead for comics reading. It feels like, remember when Green Lantern #1 dropped, that Jeff Johns wrote? In like the first pages of the first issue, he says the words Blackest Night appear.
Yep, I remember.
And it was like, if you read it at the time, it would have meant nothing. Like, oh, whatever, whatever. You just see the phrase Blackest Night, you're like, oh, well, that's from the Green Lantern. Oh, that's all it is. But clearly he was planting seeds back then in like 2005 or whatever, whenever he started that series, 7.
Mm-hmm.
For Blackest Night that was going to happen like 6-7 years later. And maybe he didn't know it was going to happen, but he had the idea and it was percolating. And it feels like he's doing the same thing here more explicitly. And that's
but
exciting.
is he going to be the one to write some of these things though? Because we said is he doing what J.J. Abrams did in Force Awakens, and he's like setting up these ideas, and he's like maybe people will run with them, maybe people won't, but they're there.
I think these ideas were approved by editorial, and that this is like the like 5G is, as you just said, is like apparently an unofficial thing. I think that this stuff, this is the roadmap that's been approved, but like we know the mile markers, but we don't know what happens in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And he may not be, because he's not technically employed by DC Comics anymore. No,
he's a freelance writer like he used to be.
That's right.
Because he's going to be over at Stargirl.
Because he's producing, right? So he's employed by Warner Brothers,
right? But not by the comics division.
That's right. So yeah, but honestly, like, as good as he is at like this is his strength. Like he is a writer. Like he might be good at a lot of other things. I don't know. I've not met him, but I did meet him.
We met him together.
Yeah, just kidding. We met him together. So he's very nice. He's a very nice man.
Very nice fellow.
And but as like in the schemes of the things we've seen him do and be given credit for, this is his biggest strength. Figuring out, he knows, like Dave Filoni knows what makes Star Wars, and Kevin Feige knows what makes Marvel and whatever else. This Jeff Johns knows what makes DC.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That is such a great comparison.
Yeah, and but maybe he's not so. But he knows how to get that across in his comics more than I think he's allowed to get across in his other projects.
Yeah, I think so too. He that is his medium, and when he's writing more than when he's like managing and overseeing, like when he's actually the one writing it, is when it really shines. When he like architects it and someone else executes it, it doesn't come across the same way.
No,
it's really best when he does both. When he's like, here's my idea, do you approve it? Great, I'm going to go write it.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. But I think a lot of creatives, that's pretty much the way.
Yeah.
So it's funny, when we said like, oh, let's talk about Doomsday Clock, I was jazzed. I was like, this book was great. And now we're talking about it, and I'm like, this book was good.
This book was okay. To me, I would give it okay.
Yeah.
But
I think Gary
was like fantastic.
I think Gary Frank's art is a big selling point.
True.
Here, but honestly, I think that Tom King's use of the 9-panel grid was better than with his artists on Batman and Mr. Miracle than what we were looking at here in Doomsday Clock. There was something really special about that 9-panel grid. The pacing is a huge part of comics, and the way the grids are laid out is how you would cut scenes together, or there was something about it. It was good, but not exact.
Yeah.
Here, but anyway,
that's a fair criticism. That's fair. I will say this 12th issue had a ton of beautiful splash pages that I want as like desktop wallpapers. Like there's some really standout stuff.
Super standout. And but I actually, what I really liked is that it took 12 issues to get to that point where you actually don't see splash pages. Watchmen does the same thing. You don't actually see big splash pages until the Squid, and so until you see
Superman did the same thing.
Yeah, right. And so that's a really nice technique, and it's like it starts on the small scale and it grows and grows and grows via those panels. Dark Knight Returns doesn't do it exactly like that, but it starts very small and escalates in its storytelling that way. It's all good, man. It's all good. Comics are great. Any last thoughts?
I'm just happy that I'm happy DC is making stuff that I'm like excited about again. It was a few years there where I was not super jazzed, but I'm excited again, and I'm enjoying things again, and I'm happy. I'm a happy reader.
Well, moral of the story on that is that you should blame Dr. Manhattan for that.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah. But I'm glad that he got inspired and figured it out.
Me too. Man, I just love an inspirational Superman. It just gets me jazzed.
Yeah.
Like, it inspires me.
When Superman is firing on all cylinders, I feel like the whole universe does. The whole DC universe.
Yep, it's so true. It's so true. But you can find us on beerwithgeeks.com, Gmail, Facebook, and Twitter. You can rate and review us on iTunes, find us at other places podcasts can be found, and patreon.com/thoughtbubbleaudio to check out all of our other Thought Bubble audio shows.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. Frank, what a pleasure talking about comics. It's been a long time.
It has been too long.
We should talk about comics more often, perhaps in the next year or so.
Sounds good. We got a whole year ahead of us, buddy.
We do indeed. So, until next time, cheers.
Cheers.